In China, the housing crisis doesn't always start with rent. It starts with something worse. A payment, a contract, a family handing over savings for a home that isn't finished. A home that exists on paper, but not in concrete. And once you have lived through that fear, you stop seeing housing as shelter. You see it as trust. Because in many places, people didn't just buy a house. They bought a promise. They paid for a future room, a future kitchen, a future key. And then the future didn't arrive. That is China's signature pain. Not only the cost, not only the size, the feeling that the ground can vanish even after you paid for it. A couple stands in a half-built apartment block, staring at raw walls and dust. No windows installed, no elevator working, no finished stairwell, just silence and the sound of their own breathing. They are not complaining about luxury. They are asking a terrifying question. If we paid, where is our home? And when that question has no answer, life collapses in a quiet way. Because housing isn't only a place to sleep. It's the foundation people build everything on. Marriage plans, children, care for parents, a job choice, a city choice, a future. When the foundation cracks, everything above it becomes fragile. That's why this crisis is so emotionally heavy. It's not just expensive, it's unsafe. Unsafe in the deepest sense. You can do what you were told to do and still lose. You can be responsible, still lose. You can pay, still lose. And that turns normal people into anxious people. People who check construction updates like they're checking a heartbeat. People who stare at unfinished buildings like they're staring at their own ruined timeline. People who whisper about developers the way you whisper about something dangerous. Meanwhile, the day-to-day market is still brutal. Rent is not gentle when demand is concentrated. Deposits, agents, screening, competition. A normal apartment can disappear fast, and the moment you hesitate, someone else takes it. So many people live in a strange, split reality at the same time. One half of the country is trying to rent and survive monthly pressure. The other half is trying to get a home that was already paid for to actually exist. Both halves produce the same emotion: powerlessness, and the crisis shows up inside the home too. Not with riots, with compression. Adults sharing rooms far longer than they expected. Families squeezing into smaller spaces because the real home is delayed or unreachable. A living room that becomes a bedroom at night. A kitchen table that becomes an office in the morning. A loft bed isn't a lifestyle trend. It's surrender. A wall desk isn't minimalist. It's the last surface left where your life can function. Storage walls aren't style, they're evidence. Evidence that the space cannot hold a normal life, so the life must fold. These aren't solutions, they're coping, because the alternative isn't better. The alternative is instability you can't afford. Now the shock factor. A home is supposed to be the base layer of life, the stable ground under everything. But in a system where people can pay in advance for something not yet built, the base layer becomes a gamble. And once shelter becomes a gamble, fear becomes permanent. You don't just worry about the rent, you worry about whether your entire future is real. So why does it feel like this? Not slogans, not blame, just forces that stack together until the pressure becomes normal. First, housing became a national engine. When property becomes a major store of value, a major driver of local revenue, and a major source of household wealth, the entire society becomes exposed to the housing cycle. When the cycle slows, fear spreads into everything, because too many lives were built on the assumption that housing would always behave one way. Second, pre-sale structures shift risk onto buyers. When buyers pay before completion, delays and developer stress do not stay inside a company. They land on families. They land on savings. They land on marriages, children, and retirement plans. When the risk lands on families, the crisis becomes personal. Third, demand concentrates where opportunity concentrates. Work, universities, healthcare, and services draw people to the same corridors of opportunity. When millions need the same connected areas, housing becomes a choke point. The same streets, the same districts, the same limited supply in the places that actually function for daily life. Fourth, confidence collapses faster than supply. Once people stop trusting the market, behavior changes. They delay purchases. They delay moves. They cling to what they have. Mobility slows. And when mobility slows, opportunity slows with it. Now, people ask the question they always ask when a system starts to feel dangerous. What is the government doing? On paper, there are many levers. There are policies aimed at stabilizing developers and ensuring that unfinished projects can be completed. There are efforts to support financing for project completion and to reduce the risk of paid but not delivered. There are also adjustments to mortgage rules and purchase restrictions in different places, sometimes tightening, sometimes easing, depending on market pressure. There are also campaigns and regulations intended to curb speculation and bring housing back toward use. Because when homes become pure assets, ordinary people lose. And local authorities often have their own measures: support for first-time buyers, price guidance, project oversight, and completion push programs. So yes, policies exist, programs exist, interventions exist, but people don't live on paper. They live in outcomes. And the outcome many people recognize is still this: they still don't trust the promise. They still don't trust the timeline. They still don't trust that paying guarantees a home. Because once trust is broken, it doesn't come back quickly. And when trust is broken, the human cost becomes severe. People expected something simple. If you work, you can build a stable life. If you save, you can buy shelter. If you pay, the home arrives. When those expectations collapse, the anger isn't loud at first. It's quiet. It's shame. It's sleeplessness. It's the feeling that you did everything you were told to do, and the system still let you fall. Now add the pressure point people feel but don't want to talk about with hate: migration. China has massive internal migration. Workers move from one province to another, from rural areas to cities, chasing jobs and survival. But access to housing, services, and benefits can be shaped by registration systems, local eligibility rules, and employment ties. So newcomers often cluster in the cheapest segments: shared rentals, dorm-style housing, or crowded outskirts. That can add pressure at the low-cost end, especially in the cities where opportunity concentrates. But it does not explain the whole crisis. China's housing pressure is bigger than one group. Its confidence, supply timing, concentration of demand, and a system where housing became too central to everything. Still, when the system is already tight, any added pressure becomes more visible. And when pressure becomes visible, people become exhausted. They become done. Because they don't want a lecture about patience. They want the basic promise of shelter to mean something again. And that's what makes this crisis feel like more than housing. It feels like a break in the contract between ordinary life and the future. Because a society can't run forever on fragile foundations, not without changing people. People stop trusting, people stop planning, people stop believing that stability is for them. They don't build, they brace. So here is the question that should make people uncomfortable. If you can pay for a home and still not receive it, what does security even mean? And what happens to everyone who keeps paying, waiting, and losing quietly while the system asks them to trust again? Subscribe to follow this series, country by country. This is not one place. It is a pattern. If this felt real, hit like. And tell me in the comments, what was the first thing housing took from you? Money, time, dignity, or the feeling that you are safe? Subscribe because the next country is worse in a different way.